U.S. border entry points in Mexico are now back to normal.
It's happening right now. The shutdown Chuck Schumer thought would make him a hero has turned him into the face of political failure. The Democrats believed they could pressure Republicans into surrendering. They thought the old playbook would work again. Shut things down, blame the other side, watch the media amplify your message, and wait for your opponents to cave. Instead, the polls coming in are absolutely brutal. Americans are siding against them in numbers we haven't seen in years. We're watching a political backfire so massive, it's forcing Democratic voters themselves to question their own leadership. Not just independents, not just moderates, but people who voted blue, their entire lives are starting to ask, what are we doing? How did it all spiral out of control? Today, I want to walk you through exactly how Schumer's miscalculation exposed the weakness inside his own party, and why even Democratic insiders are quietly panicking behind closed doors. Stick with me, because the numbers and strategy we're about to explore tell a story far bigger than one shutdown. They reveal a turning point in American politics that could reshape the landscape for years to come. Government shutdowns aren't new. They're a familiar weapon in Washington's political arsenal. The way it usually works is simple. One side refuses to pass a spending bill unless certain demands are met. The government runs out of funding, services slow down or stop, and then comes the blame game. Historically, the side making the demands almost always gets blamed by the public. Why? Because most Americans, regardless of party, just want the government to function. They might agree with the demands, they might even support the cause, but using a shutdown as leverage, that tends to backfire. Voters see it as holding the country hostage, and they don't reward that kind of theater. Schumer and the Democratic leadership knew this history. They've been in Washington long enough to have lived through multiple shutdowns. So why did they think this time would be different? That's where this all gets interesting. Because they didn't just miscalculate the politics. They misjudged their own base, misread the national mood, and underestimated their opponents' patience. Democrats were convinced that Republicans, especially with Trump back in the spotlight, would be easy targets. They thought, we'll make this about Trump's chaos, about Republican extremism, about protecting essential programs. The media will echo our message, the pressure will build, and Republicans will fold within days, maybe a week. But here's what they didn't account for. The old playbook doesn't work when the public can see through it. And that's where the panic began. Because when the first major polls came out after the shutdown started, the results were absolutely devastating. One of the most respected polling organizations released numbers that sent shockwaves through Democratic offices. Around 60 to 65% of Americans said they believed Republicans would win this standoff. Only about a third thought Democrats would come out on top. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't a close call. This was a landslide of public opinion before the fight had even really begun. But it got worse. When pollsters asked whether Democrats should end the shutdown immediately by accepting the Republicans' proposal, again, nearly two-thirds of Americans said yes. Not just Republicans, not just independents. A supermajority of the country wanted Democrats to fold and move on. Now, if you followed politics for any length of time, you know that these kinds of numbers don't lie. They reflect something deeper than partisanship. They show that people are tired. They're exhausted by the theatrics. And when you compare this shutdown to previous ones, a clear pattern emerges. The public almost always turns against whoever is seen as making demands and blocking progress. What made this particularly painful for Democrats was that another major newspaper had run a poll just before the shutdown, asking voters a straightforward question. Should Democrats vote to shut down the government if their demands aren't met? The answer, again, around 60 to 65% said no, don't do it, it's not worth it. So Democrats had a warning. The data was sitting right there, and yet they went ahead anyway. Why? Because the numbers inside their own party told something completely different. And this is where we start to see the real fracture. Let me explain something that doesn't get talked about enough in the media. Political parties aren't monolithic, they're coalitions. And the Democratic coalition right now is deeply divided. On one side, you have the progressive activists, the vocal base, the people who show up at rallies and dominate social media. They want confrontation. They want their leaders to fight, to resist, to never give an inch. On the other side, you have moderate Democrats and independents who lean left on some issues but just want competent governance. They're not interested in revolution, so they want their party to solve problems, not create them. And right now, those two groups are pulling in completely opposite directions. Here's where it gets even more revealing. Recent polling showed that only about a quarter of registered voters approve of the Democratic Party overall. But here's the kicker. Even among Democrats themselves, approval of their own party's performance in Congress has collapsed. It used to be in the high 80s, back when a new administration came in with fresh energy and promises. Now, it's barely holding at around 50% or less. That's a stunning collapse. When half or more of your own voters are dissatisfied with your leadership, you're not dealing with a messaging problem. You're dealing with a legitimacy crisis. And that crisis has been building for years, quietly, beneath the surface. The shutdown didn't create it. It just exposed it to the harsh light of day. So, why did Schumer go through with it? Desperation. That's the simplest answer, and sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. Chuck Schumer is one of the least popular members of Congress right now. His approval ratings have been sinking. He's facing pressure from the left, including a potential primary challenge from a well-known progressive who's been breathing down his neck, making noise, positioning herself as the fighter the base wants. Schumer needed to show strength. He needed a moment that would rally his party and remind people why he's the leader. So he chose this fight. He thought a government shutdown would be that moment, a chance to stand tall against the Republicans, to energize his base, to prove he's not just another cautious politician afraid to take risks. But he miscalculated badly, because while the progressive base might have cheered at first, the rest of the country, including a huge chunk of moderate Democrats and nearly all independents, saw something completely different. They didn't see strength, they saw stubbornness. They didn't see leadership, they saw dysfunction. And here's the thing about political desperation. It breeds mistakes. When you're acting out of fear, whether it's fear of losing your seat, fear of losing relevance, or fear of your own base turning on you, you stop thinking strategically, you start making emotional decisions. And emotional decisions in politics rarely end well. While Schumer and the Democrats were stumbling into this mess, Republicans were playing a very different game. And this is where the strategy gets fascinating, because it's a masterclass in patience. Republicans didn't demand new spending. They didn't attach controversial policies. They didn't make grand ultimatums. They simply put forward what's called a clean continuing resolution. For those unfamiliar with Washington jargon, a continuing resolution is basically a temporary funding bill that keeps the government running at current levels while Congress works out a longer-term budget. Clean means it doesn't have any extra demands or conditions attached. It's straightforward. Let's keep things running as they are, and we'll negotiate the bigger stuff later. This was the same kind of bill that had passed before, with bipartisan support, including votes from Schumer himself. So Republicans could stand there and say, with a straight face, we're not asking for anything new. We're not playing games. We just want to keep the lights on. If you want to block this, that's on you. It was brilliant positioning. And it put Democrats in an impossible spot. Because now, if they voted no, they'd be the ones blocking something reasonable. They'd be the ones demanding changes to a bill that had worked before. They'd be the ones shutting down the government over demands that most Americans didn't even fully understand or support. And this is where political psychology comes into play. Because voters don't always follow the details. They don't read every clause of every bill. But they have an instinct for who's being reasonable and who's being difficult. And when one side is saying, let's just keep things running, and the other side is saying, not unless you give us what we want, the reasonable side usually wins in the court of public opinion. Republicans understood this. They stayed calm, they stayed on message, and most importantly, they stayed patient. Trump, who's usually not known for restraint, actually showed remarkable discipline during this whole episode. Instead of jumping into the media fray and making himself the center of the story, he largely stepped back and let Democrats own the crisis. While the shutdown dominated headlines, Trump focused on other things. He continued working on diplomatic initiatives. There were developments in the Middle East, progress on peace talks that had been stalled for years. He focused on law and order issues, cracking down on local officials in certain cities who had become unpopular, even in their own blue states. He looked presidential. He looked like someone governing while Congress bickered. This was strategic brilliance, because every day that Trump looked calm and in control, while Democrats looked chaotic and desperate, the narrative shifted a little more. And here's what's fascinating. The media really tried to pin this on Republicans. The initial coverage absolutely attempted to frame this as Republican obstruction, as Trump's chaos infecting Congress again. But something interesting happened. That narrative didn't stick. Within days, as more information came out, as people actually looked at what was being proposed versus what was being blocked, the story started to change. Independent voters especially began to shift their views rapidly. By the time that major poll came out, around 60 to 65% of independents wanted Democrats to end the shutdown immediately. That's a massive number. Independents are the swing voters who decide elections. They're not loyal to either party. They vote based on competence, reasonableness, and results. And right now, they're associating Republicans with pragmatism and Democrats with dysfunction. That's a perception problem that doesn't go away quickly. Now, you might be wondering, how did Democrats not see this coming? How did they walk into such an obvious trap? And that brings us to something I call the doom loop. You might have heard it referred to differently, but the concept is simple. When a political party starts making decisions to please the most extreme 20 or 30% of its base, it inevitably alienates the other 70 or 80% of voters. Think of it like this. Imagine you run a restaurant. You have regular customers who like your food just fine. It's good, solid, reliable. But you have a small group of very vocal customers who want you to completely change the menu. They're passionate, they're loud, they leave reviews, they organize. So you think, maybe if I give them what they want, they'll bring in more business. But here's what happens. You change the menu to please that vocal minority. And suddenly, your regular customers stop coming. They didn't want a radical new menu. They liked what you had. The vocal group is happy for a while, but there aren't enough of them to sustain your business. And now you're stuck. If you change back, the vocal group revolts. If you stay the course, you lose everyone else. That's the doom loop. Democrats are trapped in exactly this cycle right now. Their progressive base demands confrontation, demands purity tests, demands that leadership never compromise. But every time Democratic leaders give in to those demands, they lose moderates, they lose independents, and they even lose some of their own traditional voters who just want practical solutions. Schumer's current crisis is a perfect illustration of this trap. He felt pressure from progressives to take a hard line, to fight, to shut things down if necessary. So he did. And it backfired spectacularly with everyone else. Now he's facing criticism from all sides. The progressives will always want more resistance. The moderates are furious that he made the party look unreasonable. And the general public has tuned out or turned against the whole spectacle. What makes this even more remarkable is that even some of the media figures who usually defend Democrats have started to sound the alarm. I'm not talking about conservative commentators. I'm talking about people who've been reliable allies for years. One prominent commentator on a major cable news network, someone known for progressive views, went on air and said, Democrats were doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. Now, he tried to add that they were doing it for the right reasons, but even that caveat couldn't hide the fundamental criticism. This strategy isn't working. When your own...
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. I'm in darkness because I think America is at a dark stage in this era. And I think what the Democrats are doing is a disgrace. Because several times during the budget cuts, Republicans came to the tables and they said our military people will be paid. Our air traffic people will be paid after we negotiate this budget. I think it is a shame that air traffic controlmen are not being paid. Military personnel are not being paid because Democrats want to include illegal immigrants in sanctuary cities like Chicago and New York and California into getting Medicare. I think that I've always thought that money is entitled for citizens of the United States of America. Now, somebody that I don't even believe in sanctuary city. And by means, I'm not saying that I do not agree with everything President Donald Trump does, but it's just interesting. And you know what? I saw this video and I just want to share it. And if you want to comment on it, I appreciate it. It's by Elon Musk, and you can use this video, okay, in the future to see what we were going through in year 2025. We were going through immigration situations, sanctuary cities, and specifically talking about the budget cuts. A shame on Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. That's all I can say. So I'm going to end this right now.
Data analysis shows how the deployment.
You know what? That's why, let me tell people, this is why I have on the show, because you know what? You should not have someone on your show that has exactly the same ideology, got the same premise that you. And you know what? I'm not self-centered because the world does not revolve around Clifton Raheem Brad. Okay? And I would like to ask you, if what you're saying is true, what is the reason? Since the National Guards have been in Washington, D.C., I have tape on that too, because you made me do research. I appreciate it. What is the reason that the criminal activity in Washington, D.C. has decreased? What is the reason there's no reported homicides? Okay. And the mayor of Washington, D.C. said, you know what? I admit that it is helping. What is the reason?
I don't know. Okay, I don't know. You seem to think it's because of the National Guard being there. I don't know. I'm not going to give them the credit for it because, again, it's like, what was it? And that's when you and I talked about it. What was it prior to them getting there? What was it? I know he wanted the homeless out of the way. And when the young man got beat up, that was working, I guess, under that Doge. That's what kicked it off in Washington.
Yes.
Beat up and robbed or whatever. And, the president got very upset. And he's like, okay, Washington, D.C. needs to be cleaned up. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. What's his reason for wanting to come here? Because no one in government has been beat up or carjacked or robbed. But he don't like democratic cities. And that's his right to. We didn't vote for him. I don't support him. I never would. Mm-hmm. But I used to watch his show. I thought it was funny.
Yes. So are you denying? I got a video showing the statistics of which you made me do my homework, saying that criminal activity has decreased. Do you acknowledge? You're saying for criminal activity to decrease in Chicago because of the National Guards, and
it might because it'll make everybody sit at home like, oh, we're not going to go down there. We know what's down there. We know what's waiting for us. We ain't gonna walk right into that. As soon as they leave, we gonna be back on.
So court-tailing are stopping a homicide, even if it's one. Is that not a good thing?
You stop it temporarily, I guess. It's always good when you can stop someone from being killed. Nobody should be killed. But you putting all these eggs in one basket for one murder, and not saying that that's like not worth it, but tell me something good about our city. don't always be the negative on.
No, you know what?
I haven't heard you say one. I mean, you've been talking as we pick up, when we meet up every week. But
Chicago has a beautiful, it's beautiful, it's scenic, and you can see a whole lot of things, and you can do a lot of things and eat different foods. And Chicago, you know what? I don't see myself moving to another of the city. I don't see that. I've thought about moving to Africa, and since I'm retired, I might do that. Spend half of my time in probably Ghana or something like that, and then come back to the United States. So that's what I would say good about Chicago. But you're saying, and then ICE agents should not be allowed to do their jobs in Chicago, New York, and California. They should not, because the federal law should not be observed, in your opinion, in your view, right?
Oh, now you're going to ICE?
Yes.
No, like I said, I think initially when he said he was going to get the immigrants out or the illegals, most people thought that was going to be the people that had come over in the 4 years that Biden was in, that we saw crossing and then getting bused to whatever states. I think that was excellent strategy by him and Greg Abbott.
Yes.
Because this wasn't something that was just, because when they were dropping them off, I was like, well, how do the buses know what police station and where they're going to take them to? Who's giving them the addresses, and not just putting them, say, downtown and letting them out at Greyhound Station. So it was good. It was something, because when I told a friend of mine in Florida and I was feeling a little worried on Biden, I was like, man, I says, this is going to be an issue, because I think they had taken a building over in Woodlawn on 60-something. And people weren't very happy about that. And that's the neighborhood I grew up in. And they were turning it into a place to house and the community wasn't feeling that. Of course, they always come to the lower, they always come to the black communities. We didn't hear them too much going up in, the north side or whatever. I don't even know what they call their communities up there. But we saw. But that was everybody's thought, that it was going to be these people that came over, walked through and climbed the wall or whatever. But he was talking about anybody, as we see now, that came over 20 or 25 years ago and never did what they were supposed to do as far as getting themselves legally accepted, as a citizen. And people were telling me, I was saying, well, you know what? If you've been there 20 years or 25 and you've been working and you haven't taken the initiative to get yourself your citizenship, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if I feel sorry for you or whatever. And then they want to go to, well, it's expensive. Okay, but you were making a living. There's some that bought houses. Like, tell me how you do that. I can tell you a story with someone working at the jail with me who didn't have papers to be in the U.S.
Yes.
Like, you got a government job, but I feel that does it warrant taking them to jail or other countries where they take them back to even where they came from, or give them some kind of, instead of just saying, they say,
Ace, we have a meeting of the minds. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not, because I saw them walking around in my community and I was like, okay, you should have seen, if anyone on here is familiar with 87th and Dan Ryan at the Home Depot, oh my God. I just quit going up there. I was like, what? And they put a big fence up around the parking lot to keep them out, and they start blaring this loud music, I guess, so it would drown out anything, and it was just crazy.
Wow.
Like, so there is, you got to have some kind of structure. You got to get some stuff under control.
Yeah.
But this chasing them down and doing all this, and and some states are now upset because they're going in and they're recruiting out of their already law enforcement pool, and they don't like that. They offer them $50,000 bonus with a payoff of school debt if they have that, to come on over to and work for ICE, because he did give them quite a bit of money.
Yeah,
but I didn't. And again, to the level that it is so many here, I was ignorant to that. I was like, God, they kept saying that Hispanics were going to be the next, outnumber us and stuff. And but I was like, well, but they can't vote because they're not, registered and not legal. But yeah, because I think today is their parade. I'm gonna be watching that.
Ice agents might be there.
And do you go and disrupt that? And because some of the people are gonna get upset. You killed a man yesterday, and he should have just stopped. Don't be resisting. If either don't come out the house or try to go somewhere yourself. But you think you're gonna outrun them in this, and they swarm on you with 2 or 3 cars? You ain't got a chance. And he lost his life yesterday.
Yeah.
He lost his life, and you hurt one of the agents. So, but I guess on a larger scale, this president and his people knew, well, they don't think that no one other than their race anyway should be in this country, any kind of leadership, any kind of whatever. So if they could take us, they
had to wait a minute, sister. Wait a minute. You have to follow a protocol to come in. And I submit to you and the listening audience, there's a lot of people listening to us. If we go to Europe, Africa without a passport, we're going to be expedited back to the United States. And we're going to
shouldn't get over there anyway without a passport. Okay. You should be stopped at the airport.
What am I saying about Sanctuary City? I get it.
But you ain't going over there on that pretense. If you're going over there, I don't know if you're going over there to visit it. Because a lot of them come over here to visit and they just don't leave.
Oh, okay.
You came and visited 20 years ago?
Okay. Do you think? Let me ask you something. I'm gonna go to Washington D.C.
Yeah, it's nice.
I'm gonna go to Washington D.C. and the thing is, what is your overall response about the criminal activity decreasing in Washington, D.C., and no homicides since the National Guards have been there, and the mayor saying, you know what, I have to admit, they have helped us to curtail crime. What is your response to that?
First, I don't believe it. First
of all, let me play this video. Okay, because I want you to hear this. You made me do research. I appreciate it.
Deployment of National Guard troops is affecting crime in the nation's capital. According to the data, violent crime is down by almost half when compared to the same nearly 3-week period last year. Assaults are down 19%, burglary is down 48%, and homicide is down 57% from August 7th through August 25th. And for more on this, let's bring in John Kelly. He's CBS News Vice President of Data Journalism and our data guru. John, good to have you on. So break this down for us. Did you find anything surprising or unexpected in your analysis?
Sure. We found a lot of interesting things, Tom. We really wanted to look at what is going on with crime incidents across D.C. in these few weeks since we had these federal troop and law enforcement deployments. And so we're able to look at every incident of crime and its location, and we can see things that are related, we think, to the presence of an extreme amount of additional law enforcement. We're seeing less violent crime incidents reported to the police, at least. Fewer assaults, fewer murders, fewer gun crimes. One of the things that's been plaguing the city with auto thefts down 36%, and so we looked at this time period of these few weeks that there have been these deployments in the city, and we compared that back not just to the same days last year, but we wanted to look over the longer haul too to see if the trend lines held up. And we've seen this decrease is pretty similar. It's a little more than half if you look at the 5-year average. And so there's less, at least reported crime going on. Now, that's a complex situation, right? There are a lot of factors that can contribute to that. We can't know for sure how these deployments are affecting that, other than the presence of additional law enforcement and military personnel in, key locations downtown.
John, one of the things I want to talk about, there's a lot of information and some misinformation about the location of where these troops are versus the crime rates there. You looked into that. What did you find?
Well, one thing that's key is that crime incidents are extremely evenly dispersed across Washington, D.C. And a lot of people, everyone comes with their perception of how they feel or what they experience and what they see. But in general, the data over time shows that the crime is pretty evenly dispersed throughout the city. And so there were a lot of talking points around, well, the federal troops and the federal law enforcement officials have been deployed in places that are lower crime areas. And for a couple of these locations on the National Mall, that might be the case, or near monuments. But in general, what we found was that within a half a mile of the confirmed locations, for every one of these, incidents, we're seeing in general a higher than average crime rate and incidents clustered around those locations. These are some of the higher crime low areas in the city. The areas north of the mall and north of downtown are areas that have seen a lot of growth in crime incidents over the past few years. And so those are areas where there had been a lot of criminal activity. And so the deployments, in some place like U Street, have more concentration of crime than you would see in 90% of the neighborhoods across the city.
That's really interesting. John Kelly giving us the data analysis behind the headlines. Such critical work that you do. Thank you for coming on, John.
After hearing something like that?
And I should have been writing my little notes down.
Okay, if the criminal activity has decreased, they have not hurt Washington, D.C. They've helped Washington, D.C. Would you agree or disagree with that? And can you expand on that, please?
I don't know if I can agree or disagree. I heard him say that they have been deployed in areas that were less crime-ridden. You might have to play that back, but he did say that. I saw that map up there, and I've been to Washington a couple of times, and I knew in that DuPont Center, that's mostly in the downtown Washington, Baltimore. People just transition like we do from here to Indiana. So I talked to some family there, and it was like, well, they're not coming in the area where the crime was happening. They're mostly saturated in the buildings down there, downtown area, or whatever what they call they consider theirs. He gave a graphic that he put up there, and that graphic said 5 years. And then you have someone doing analysis of something that's up in the screen. It's like he's in Florida. Are you serious? Give me somebody that's actually on the ground, boots on the ground, or in Washington, D.C., because, and that's just common sense. If you're going to send the National Guards in here and people are watching and everybody, even the criminal, going to say, okay, well, I got to lay low. I can't go out here and do what I usually do because they're going to have more whatever. Or you might have something like don't care and going to do it anyway. So I really can't see. I don't, like I said, I had to look at some graphics because I just not going to believe them telling me that, because I know this lying-ass president we have and his office and administration, and they'll say they lie so much you can't believe anything.
Yes.
And they say it's just, man, this. But it's been real good being on here. I kind of like this. This is cool.
Okay. And you know what? I want to thank you, and you overextended your time, and I appreciate that. But I would like to ask you, do you have any finishing comments that you would like to give in regards to these issues? Or there may have been a question that I did not ask you, a message that you may want to convey to the audience, because there are a lot of people looking on YouTube. And really? Yes.
Keep telling me that. That's I really don't do. I know you're gonna put me on the spot like that, but no, I'm good. I kind of like it. We always talk every week, so I just like for here in Chicago, our politics. I'm riding with the mayor. I get out there. I haven't seen nothing that would really make me go another way. Same for the governor.
What your grandfather was doing. Put it in the chat room.
Okay.
Any message for your grandchildren? Great.
I happen to know someone who was in the NSA.
Okay.
All right? And they don't know what they'll know now. I've been in their building with him. Did you see it?
Yes, sir.
And they,
Some people don't know what NSA
the National Security Administration. And when I walked up in there and they got video screens. I mean, from here to 35th Street.
Those street cameras, right?
Those are the screens like you watch on a computer.
Right. Right.
All right? They got a room where they listen to conversations all around the country. All right? That's why I can say what I said. But they let me go because he was an important person. And they figured if he was pregnant, it was all right. All right? They made a mistake, but I never forgot that.
Well, wait a minute, all the while.